show. Office corner, she asked about the books they wrote.
Lyle Simpson is with us. I am so pleased to introduce you to him. Some of you may already know who Lyle is. He's written a brilliant book, Fully Human, Fully Alive, a human model, a human model, a human model. That's what it's about. Fully human, fully alive. And you can get this book for a song on Amazon, Kindle style. That's how I got mine, because I like to read that way, or hardcover or softcover. But we are thrilled to have him with us. We talked off the air, and I could have talked to him for 10 hours. Lyle, thanks for coming on.
I'm happy to be here.
So, we have to talk about your background and your interesting life. But first, let's just dive into what made you write this book.
Well, in the first place, my undergraduate work was in psychology and philosophy. And it's a long story, but I joined the Unitarian Church, and mainly because so many of my professors were sitting in the congregation. But anyway, I became president of that church, Des Moines Unitary Church, and interestingly enough, in 1917, the minister of that church is the one that actually named the Epicurean philosophy humanism in a sermon that he delivered. The church doesn't meet in June, July, and August, so he had to have a barn burner in September. He met John Dietrich, who's the first person in America that discovered the Epicurean philosophy, who was a Unitarian minister then out in Wyoming and moved to Minneapolis. And since there's only one Unitarian church per community, they meet regionally. So he liked what Dietrich was saying, so he wrote a sermon. He sent it to Dietrich to see what he said, and he says, well, I like everything about it except the title. People are never going to remember what you said because the title is so complex. You need something simple to call it, something like human or humanism. So that's what he did, and that's where it came from. And then he went on to be the former of the American Humanist Association. Well, I'm standing in my church library waiting for my daughter to get out of Sunday school. I pick up the smallest book I could find because I'm dyslexic. It was on the meaning of humanism. I'd never heard of that before. But I got to reading it. I discovered the American Humanist Association. And so I joined. I wanted to find out if there were any other humanists in Iowa. And so I decided I'd become a humanist celebrant in those days. I did all the work necessary to become one, and they sent me my certificate, and it expired in 3 years. Well, that angered me. So I wrote a nasty letter to the president and said, my degree at Drake doesn't expire. What's with this? She called me up and she said, well, I'm not going to bother to explain all that. We get a lot of unusual people applying, and it gives us a way to clean up the system. But what I'm calling about is our general counsel just quit today, and I'm wondering if you'd consider being general counsel of the American Humanist Association. I thought, oh my, why not? So I agreed to do that because that way I could meet a lot of people that thought this way. And that was in 1974, and I just finally left being an officer of the organization last December after 50 years.
Wow.
My successor as national president was a guy named Isaac Asimov, who published 480 books. But other people that I've gotten to know, like Carl Sagan, the astronomer that created Cosmos, Gene Roddenberry that created Star Trek. Every edition of Star Trek is a humanist message. Will and Ariel Durant wrote The History of Civilization. Betty Friedan, biggest bitch I've ever met, but you'd have to be to emancipate women like she did. But Gloria Steinem, her successor, is a beautiful person. These are all people that I've known. And Abraham Maslow was a humanist. Unfortunately, he died before I got nationally involved. But I spent quite a bit of time studying him. And I thought, my heavens, there's more here than meets the eye. This is something we really need to think a lot about. And so I wrote this book because Maslow discovered that 70% of all Americans are locked on the third level, the social level, never realizing there's 3 levels above that would greatly enhance the quality of their life. So how do we do that? And I put quite a bit of effort into doing this, and of course that's the whole subject of this book. And I'd been to Israel 3 times just to validate the information that I provide in the book. And the book has evolved over time, but I'm 88. This is probably my last time, but I'm quite content that what I'm saying in here is accurate. The book's been now published in English, French, German, and Spanish.
Wow.
And I've got an audio book, and I'm trying to reach people to make a difference in the world, because frankly, when you look at life from a humanist perspective, you're not really sure there's such a thing as a life after death, because there's too much evidence that it's created by man. So then what's the purpose in your life that makes it worth living? It's leaving the world a better place because you've been here. And what I find, which is really the 6th level of fully human alive, what I have found is that if you look at life in that way, I was a company commander in the Iowa Army National Guard, and my chaplain was an Episcopal priest. And he taught me, you can't give enough of yourself away. The more you try and give yourself to others, the more comes back in ways you can never anticipate. So I've been an attorney for 62 years now, but I've always given a third of my time to society one way or the other. And one of my publishers published my resume that my law firm required I keep, because when they start a lawsuit, they've got to determine there's no conflicts. And I've been on so many boards in the community, they didn't want to sue somebody only to find out I'd been a board member, and they were excluded after they put in all that time. And so, anyway, the net result is that once you start doing that, and my resume is now 19 pages, it's
Wow.
on my website, and I can see the effect of many of these things. Death isn't particularly relevant anymore, and so I don't have any fear of death. In fact, I've told my funeral director that I want to be buried with a copy of my book, but I'd like a flashlight. He says, well, how about a candle?
I love that, right? How about a candle? Wow. And the amazing people that you've met, and you have touched the world, it's quite clear, there's no doubt. And this is a big legacy for you, this book. And you talk about the 6 levels, and we're not going to tell everybody everything, because they should get Fully Human, Fully Alive. Again, it's a song. You can get it any way you like it. So go to Amazon and get it. It is a fascinating read. And you talk about Maslow, and you talk about, getting past 3. What is, just briefly, because we want people to be able to read this and go deep, because you did all that research, but what are the 3 levels above that people don't reach?
Well, maybe I should explain what all 6 of them are,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it makes a lot more sense when you start that way. Well, before Maslow created humanistic psychology started with Sigmund Freud, who 150 years ago took people with abnormal behavior and what he called therapy. He would talk with them and try and put them back into mainstream society so they could function. And then we've all heard of the dog that you rang a bell and it salivated. It created behaviorism. Behaviorism has the theory that all behavior is caused because of need deprivation. And Maslow was trying to figure out what was the need deprivation that made two of his professors such beautiful people. And all of a sudden he realized that, hey, maybe we got all this backwards. Having need deprivation, you're normal. To the extent you get a need deprivation, you can become abnormal, clear down to the people Freud was dealing with. So he started studying what are needs. And what he discovered was very interesting. Instead of it simply being linear in terms of the strength of the drive, he could categorize them on 6 different levels that make a significant difference. And the difference between these levels is the drive strength on the needs above that are only 50% of those of the needs below that. And so he categorized them and he classified them this way. The strongest needs you have are those necessary to sustain life. And incidentally, this is not only for humans, it's for organizations and governments and everything else. The most important thing is sustaining themselves. And the drive strength is very strong there. Once you feel like you're secure, you move on the security level to feather your nest to make sure you can always satisfy those needs again in the future. But the drive strength on that level is only half that of the security level. It's only half that of the basic level.
More of our conversation with Lyle Simpson next on ATN.